What scene in a movie really pissed you off? It would be like a movie being set in Toronto and a character all of a sudden is in the Statue of Liberty. The opposite happens all the time since Toronto is typically used as a low-budget New York City in film. My favorite is in Umbrella Academy when Massey Hall is used for one of Vanya's practices. One of the most historic concert venues in Canada, and people are going to notice that. I mean, missing the point entirely isn't necessarily bad if you actually put in the work. Look at How to Train Your Dragon. Those movies completely butchered the book series and ran everything through a generic/mass-produced focus group filter, and then they made it good. Hiccup being a quirky kid who makes ingenious inventions? In the book he's a useless nerd. FFS, Toothless has that name because he's an incredibly shitty and tiny dragon who doesn't even have any teeth. This is like Artemis Fowl being a bodybuilder who helps Butler beat people up. And Hiccup isn't the first dragon to try to tame a dragon. Every Viking does that because it's awesome and they're Vikings. Hiccup just figures out a better way because he can't do it the domineering way. I think the point is that deviations from the source material should be at worst neutral, and hopefully improvements. For instance, the areas where Lord of the Rings movies deviated from the source material existed mainly to make things less confusing to watchers unfamiliar with Tolkien's massive universe. These changes are generally accepted as neutral or positive changes in that they made the movies more accessible without simplifying them too much. The areas where the Hobbit movies deviated from the book mainly existed to filibuster for time and were therefore bad changes. Haven read the books, but for the film, the original ending, which was included as an extra on the DVD, was that as Will Smith's character and the girl and the kid were holed up in the basement lab, and the lead zombie was smashing up against the glass to try and get in, the glass cracked in the shape of a butterfly, and Will Smith looked at the shoulder of the zombie he had cured, and she had a tattoo of a butterfly. He re-injects her with the virus, opens the doors, and wheels the table out and lets the lead zombie take her. Her and the lead zombie nearly make out, then all the zombies just up and leave, letting Will Smith and the others live. Then they all drive up to the survivor colony with the cure, and that's the end. They tested that ending with test audiences, and the audience hated it, so they switched it for the ending that made it into the movie, where the lead zombie is slamming into the glass. Will Smith gives the cure to the girl and the kid, has them hide in like a safe or something, then grabs a hand grenade, rushes at the glass, and suicide bombs all the zombies, killing himself along with them, so the girl and kid can survive. The girl and kid drive up to the survivor colony, and the movie ends with her handing the vial with the cure in it to a soldier at the gate. The biggest problem with the Justice League has always been how do you actually make the other members useful? Some authors have Superman knocked out early in the fight to present the new bad guy as a threat and to give the other members a chance to shine. Others exaggerate their qualities, like how Morrison makes Batman this inhumanely brilliant tactician, or the Flash significantly faster than Superman, so that Superman is a jack of all trades, master of none, and the rest of the league are the masters. Snyder and Whedon didn't even try to solve the Superman problem. In fact, I'm hard-pressed to believe either of them even thought of it as a problem. It's beyond lazy how they fell into a pitfall comic book authors have been avoiding for literal decades. That's what I would do. Say you have the Flash and Superman in a movie. I'd at least let it be known that the Flash could definitely beat Superman in a foot race, or otherwise, all he is comic relief. I mean, Flash is almost always depicted as far faster than Superman. In fact, in a lot of the comics, they always have to find ways to nerf the Flash cause he's easily the most op character. He can run so fast he goes through time, phases through objects, fucking outruns death, and can perform an infinite mass punch. The first race in the first Cars movie. Chick Hicks is just causing crashes left and right. He puts every single car out of commission except for himself, Strip Withers, and Lightning McQueen. And nobody says a goddamn thing. Everything is peachy keen until the very end when he almost kills Strip. And then, when Lightning is pushing Strip across the finish line, right after Chick bumps him and nearly killed him, the announcers have the fucking gall to say, "Is pushing on the last lap legal?" Seriously? This car almost killed another car going 200 miles per hour, and they're worried about another car helping the aforementioned car finish the race? And then they hand the goddamn piston cup to the car that has been systematically murdering other cars all season. Jesus Christ, that fucking movie. Any scene in the Terminator films where the Terminator shoots a gun and misses. You're telling me Skynet can build intelligent machines and they figured out time travel yet they can't be programmed to aim straight? For me it was when a Terminator gets their hands on someone, and then throws them. They have a hydraulic press grip. They could literally crush someone's skull with one hand, while barely paying attention. If they get their hands on you, and they want you dead, you're dead. Because that's what they are. T1 and T2 didn't have this problem, and were so much more intense for it. This has always bothered me. I've worked with enough robotics engineers to deeply respect how carefully they design everything for this to not happen on accident. Limit switches, encoders, pressure sensors, rangefinders, etc. It all has to be triply checked, rigorously tested, and thoroughly reviewed to ensure an autonomous forklift in a warehouse doesn't rip you in half because of a split-second mistake. A combat robot picks you up and throws you? ARGH. Hearing stories from countries with relaxed regulation where lifts/elevators haven't been coded correctly and end up shearing body parts off because it moved without the doors closing, for instance, reminds you that they are a machine that goes up and down. They don't know that the added resistance is a body part in the way. The motor will just continue to turn. The only reason it's so safe in developed countries is because they have hundreds of sensors to ensure nothing is in the doorway, and that the doors have closed, before moving. It makes them more expensive, but that ensures we using them without having to be vigilant of a machine that can't differentiate body parts from its normal operation. The scene in the fucking 50 Shades of Grey movie where he goes to Home Depot and buys a bunch of bondage gear and includes zip ties among that list. So if you're not into BDSM, let me just tell you something. You should never ever use zip ties for sexual bondage. They cannot be loosened, they only get tighter the more you struggle, and they are thick and sharp enough to break the skin. Using zip ties is extremely dangerous and can cause serious injury or death. They have to be cut off, which can cause even more damage. And this movie acts like it's totally okay to tell millions of non-BDSM wine moms and teenage girls that this is okay. I could literally write a fucking book on all the horrible things 50 Shades gets wrong about BDSM, but that one boils my fucking blood. There's a reason the entire BDSM community came out and condemned the movies. There was also the part where he apparently ignores her when she uses her safe word, which meant that after that point it wasn't consensual bondage, it was just plain rape. The whole thing was fucked up from what I've read about it. It was basically a rich, abusive asshole who got obsessed with a clueless hot virgin and then brainwashed and abused her until she got Stockholm's and fell in love with him. In the recent movie Bloodshot, there's an early action scene in which a truck full of flour is crashed in a tunnel, and then there's a shootout/fight scene amidst a literal fog of flour in the air, mostly illuminated by people throwing road flares around for light. It looks great, but I couldn't enjoy it, because all I could think about is how airborne flour burns, and when mixed with air at the right density, it explodes. It just takes an ignition source, like any of a dozen flares, or maybe any of several dozen guns, not to mention burning vehicles. Everyone should have been blown up and burned and starved of oxygen. The most frustrating part about that is that this is something Hollywood would know. They make explosions in movies look more impressive by adding aerosolized powder like flour to make the fireball. My fiancé hasn't forgiven Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker for them making it seem like Chewbacca had died in the aircraft explosion and then he's seen alive less than 2 minutes later. Edit: thank you for the awards, kind Redditors, including my first Reddit Gold. This is now one of the highlights of mine and my fiancé's relationship. That movie had more fake-out deaths than any other movie I can think of. It's sad because it takes away from the emotion of actual deaths in the movie. I could not take that movie seriously. Palpatine. Chewbacca. C-3PO. Kylo, when Rey cuts his ship and it fucking explodes. Kylo again, when Palpatine pushes him down a hole and he climbs out later. Rey dies after killing Palpatine and Kylo resurrects her. Any others I'm missing? Aladdin uses a 7x7 board and has no king for the white pieces. Shawshank Redemption. Board set up wrong. Independence Day. Julius says it is not mate, but it is. Avengers. Board incorrect. Justice. Board incorrect. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Checkmate announced, but that is clearly not mate. This actually was a cool endgame combination designed by M. Silman, but it did not translate on screen like how he had planned. Shaft. Board in the bar set up wrong. Legally Blonde 2. Board wrong. Da Vinci Code. Set up incorrectly. Rise of Planet of the Apes. Board is wrong. Paranoia. Checkmate announced but clearly not mate. Captain America, Civil War. The board in the tower is wrong. Even movies about chess or ones that specifically reference chess have inaccuracies. Searching for Bobby Fischer has tournament inaccuracies, no clock, no recorded moves, etc., or the awful movie Checkmate has a board set up wrong despite the title referencing chess. WTF. Even the very cool movie Pawn Sacrifice is still riddled with minor chess mistakes, despite the fact that many real positions were used in several scenes. Boards set up wrong, impossible positions, incorrect mates. Seriously, Hollywood. Hire a freaking chess player to help set up boards. Hit me up. In the Chronicles of Narnia, when they return to the real world and become children again. This frustrated me so much when I was a kid, like they just lost over a decade of their lives where they were happy, but now have to abandon their kingdom and subjects to become kids living in Britain during the Second World War. That's like the first Harry Potter ending with Harry waking up in the cupboard again with no time having passed, and no apparent prospect of returning to the wizarding world. And the sequel makes it even worse since we see how much Narnia suffered because of the disappearance of their kings and queens. Again with the Harry Potter analogy, it's like Harry returning to the wizarding world and finding out that Voldemort took over because of his absence. Here is the scene for those who have trouble remembering it. https://www.youtube.com/watch v = QQRM6 Psi SMUA. When you take the books into historical context, the ending becomes a lot more understandable. The books were published in 1950, in England at a time when they were still recovering from their Second World War in living memory. C.S. Lewis had started studying at Oxford University in 1917, then was deep in trench warfare by 1918. He saw 2 of his friends get killed and was seriously injured in the attack. He suffered from homesickness and depression and often wrote about the horrors, stress, and heartbreak of war. Then in 1920 he was expected to return to Oxford University as though nothing had happened. No mourning, no mental health services, just carry on as it was and forget all that happened. In World War II he took in evacuees. These were children that had been suddenly forced from their homes and dumped, often into abusive homes, without any real idea what was happening, only to suddenly have to go back at the end of the war, to a landscape that was completely different, parents that acted different, if both your parents were still alive, and were expected to once again act like everything was okay because the war was over and they should be happy. The book was written and published for children that would understand that, they had lived that. The siblings in the book were young children dropped into the middle of a war they had nothing to do with and were expected to help win it. Then after the war they became wizened authority figures with the weight of the world on their shoulders, only to suddenly become children, freed from their responsibility until they are suddenly needed again. This was the experience of an entire generation. It just falls flat now because we see it as a cop-out. D.L. Dr. C.S. Lewis was just venting about 2 world wars in a way kids at the time could relate to. Edit, wrong uni.